powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's going on, everybody? Here on a Monday edition. That means Geoff Mosher is in the house from the Inside the Birds podcast. A new podcast dropped this morning. You can check that out wherever you listen to your podcast. Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash. An interesting weekend up at training camp. The team was out at Lincoln Financial Field last night. And Moshe, you know, this is interesting because the Phillies are in first place. The Eagles can kind of hide under the radar a little bit here. It's a little odd, don't you think?
Yeah, I remember the discussion a couple of weeks ago was, hey, Eagles training camp about to start. They got a real chance now to steal all the headlines unless the Phillies do something. And apparently the Phillies have done something. So it's been cool to see. It's nice to have more than one team to follow in this town of crazy, passionate, rabid sports fans. You would ideally love all teams to be doing this well.
Yeah, well, Ben Simmons put out a shooting video today, and apparently he's willing to not report. So the Sixers are right at the top of the list of things happening. They have a Summer League game today. The Phillies are in first place, and here are the Eagles. Of course, Geoff, you guys have that covered better than everyone over at Inside the Birds, and, of course, your team of guys really checking out this weekend. And I guess last night you got a chance to really see Jalen Hurts for the first time in the 11-on-11 in an open field. So let's start with him and what you thought with Jalen Hurts last night.
Listen, it's been an up-and-down camp for Jalen Hurts. There have been days where he's made some good throws. There are days where he's not been as good as they've wanted him to be. I don't want to say it's still early in camp, but they haven't played a preseason game yet. And we have a lot to learn about Jalen Hurts. As we talked about on the podcast today, Adam and I have pretty similar information on this, and that's that the coaches feel like he's doing okay. You know, they didn't say we weren't told that the coaches feel like he's doing great. We weren't told that the coaches are really disappointed. They feel like it's somewhere in the middle. I think one word that was used to describe it was an average camp so far. And, that might be disappointing to some. It might be expected for others. I think it's way too early to determine what that's going to mean for the season. But I'm glad we have a preseason game coming up this week. And then obviously you start to get a little deeper into camp. The offense should be pretty much all installed. So you'll see some more comfortability that the offense will have with the plays that they're asked to execute. They'll start to see the defensive looks they've been seeing all throughout camp, which have been very varied. And I think that that's one of the reasons that all the quarterbacks have kind of held on to the ball a little bit longer, because Jonathan Gannon's defense is doing a lot of stuff up front and pre-snap that might make them hold on to the ball a little bit. But as you get deeper into camp, that's not, you can't fall back on that anymore. Every day, the coaches and the players go through the film and they want to make the corrections and they want to see you do better the next day than you did the day before. And so hopefully things will start to stabilize for the offense as we get deeper into camp.
Yeah, I want to get you got Hurts last night, and how about his arsenal of weapons and how that kind of looked? Who's he connecting with and what's out there for him? We obviously know Devonta Smith's not there, so who's stepping up and who's stepping in?
Well, certainly Watkins, Mike, is a guy who's come and played the part. He was a six-round pick last year. I think a six-round pick last year. 6. Didn't get really on the field until the end of the year, made some plays. He was kind of one of those guys who, just like John Hightower, they were drafted low because they had some character concerns, some maturity more than anything concerns, where they really dedicated to football. Is that their sole focus in life? And Watkins was a guy who came on a little bit at the end of this year, had a slow start to camp because for whatever reason he was unable to complete his physical, and then he missed, I think, a day or two being on some kind of non-COVID injury type deal or non-COVID illness. But I thought when I've been there, he's had really nice plays. He seems to go get the ball well, starting to establish himself. It doesn't help John Hightower that he just now is week to week and suffering an injury. And with Devonta Smith already out and Jalen Reagor having a slow start to camp, I think Watkins has been the one who's capitalized most on those opportunities. Even Greg Ward missed a few for first two, I think, camp practices with also a non-COVID illness. And so Watkins, when you talk about after the first four, right, the first four being Devonta, Reagor, Fulgham, and Greg Ward, who's going to claim that fifth? you got to look at Quez Watkins right now as the guy who's rightfully claiming it based on merit.
Yeah, and I was going to say, there was some talk last year, Moshe, about how deep that wide receiver class was, and that Hightower and Watkins normally would have been higher picks as well had the receiver class not been so deep. I mean, are we seeing that from their talent? Are these guys that don't look like 5th and 6th round picks?
Well, I'm not sure 100%, Mike, on where they would have gone in other years, too. I mean, I'm sure some teams may have had them ranked higher on talent. I know, as we've talked about on Inside the Birds, some teams saw both of them as not necessarily draftable players, not because of talent, but because of, again, the red flags on maturity or character. So you'll get that. You'll get some teams that don't care about that stuff. You'll get some teams that value it a lot more than others. And so you'll get kind of a spectrum there for the day 3 guys on where teams have them as opposed to which teams have them off the board altogether. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I felt like this would be a big camp for Hightower to kind of get himself together and really show more consistency. And he was doing okay. Okay the first few days of camp. Not great, just okay. And then obviously getting hurt is a real big setback for him. We'll see how long he's going to be on the shelf for. But, with Watkins, again, if the talent is there and you can rectify your attitude and you can show that you're fully committed to go along with your talent, then sure, you start looking like a guy who could have been higher than your draft position, which right now looks like Quez Watkins.
Last night I thought, I don't know if you think that the left tackle position has been put to rest, but Nick Sirianni did get asked, hey, Dillard was a first-round pick. Does that factor in? I thought he pretty much put that to rest, that is not going to factor in if you believe him.
Well, I think you would have – first of all, we love Nick Sirianni, but it's really not his call, right? It's Howie Roseman's. But he does have input as far as – he and Jeff Stoutland as far as who is going to be my starter. But as much of an ego as Howie Roseman might have, and we've talked about this, he wants the best player, even as GM. The GM wants the best player playing that position because that's best for the team. You're not going to put Andre Dillard out there if he's perpetually struggling and hurt and injured just because he's your first-round pick and then get your quarterback all messed up and your whole offense imploded. So I understand why Nick Sirianni says that. It's still Howie's decision, but I still think that it's a collaborative decision on what's best for the team. And right now, what's best for the team is Jordan Mailata playing left tackle.
Seemingly by a long shot. And Mailata got all the snaps with the first team last night, correct?
I believe he did, yes. And it does appear that Dillard has more wrapping on his hand, and he's not on the injury report. But I remember when I was at practice, he got trucked a few times by Josh Sweat, went to the sideline, had his hand looked at. So maybe there's something there, but I'm not 100% sure that that's. In fact, I am 100%. That's not the reason why he's not playing well and Mailata is surging. Mailata is really playing well on his own, and it just comes at a time where Andre Dillard has yet to show that he's better for the position. I do think Dillard. I think Dillard came back with a better mental attitude. I don't think that was just lip service, and I do think he's physically bigger than, say, when he reported as a rookie. But I think coming from the system that he came in and, only being kind of a one type of player, kind of a finesse left tackle with good feet and not having that physical, bruising, nasty attitude that's been ingrained in him for years and years, I think that's hurting him right now a lot.
Geoff Mosher, football at 4. Eagles back at camp last night at Lincoln Financial Field. Over on the offensive line, too, it was Mailata Suopeta replacing Isaac Seumalo. Jack Driscoll was in for Brandon Brooks at that right guard spot with Lane Johnson there. Obviously, they're hoping Brooks and Seumalo are back and healthy and ready to go. But were you surprised that Driscoll was the first look in at that right guard spot?
No, well, I mean, Matt Pryor was the first guy for a couple of days. That actually was the big surprise to me, that they went right back to Matt Pryor at right guard. And at left guard, of course, was Nate Herbig for the first couple of days while Seumalo was out. It doesn't surprise me that they're trying different combinations because they have such good offensive line depth and they want to give everybody a fair shot. Now, Driscoll playing right guard is not a surprise to me either, because when he was drafted, we talked about this a little bit last year, Mike. When he was drafted, they felt that Auburn offense that he came from, his athleticism, would really translate well to a modern NFL offense, even as an interior offensive lineman. They felt he was athletic enough to play center if they really needed him to. if they trained him to.
Right.
That's how good they thought his footwork was. He was light at the time that they drafted him, so he was more ready to play tackle, which he did in quite a bit, even in the opener, than he was to play guard, where you need a little more bulk to you. But he's added that weight in the offseason, and so now they want to train him at right guard, because that's a spot where you can see him really sliding in if Lane Johnson's healthy, but they have an issue at guard. He's someone who could project to be a guard, if not a tackle, for years to come.
Geoff, let's go to defense, because the defensive line seemingly is becoming, a pretty good story at Eagles camp. And how did they look last night? The defensive line seems like they are really becoming one of the storylines.
I think all throughout camp, Mike, that Barnett and Josh Sweat have been the headliners. And, it's almost like, I don't know if this is 100%. I'm not in Derek Barnett's head, but you'd have to think with Josh Sweat playing so well and getting some first-team reps even on the first day, and Derek Barnett kind of being on the last year of his deal. And by the way, that restructure really is all about dummy years. This is still the last year of his deal. You would have to think that that's pushing Derek Barnett a little bit. He wants to get a long-term deal. He probably wants to be an Eagle for quite a while. He wants to show why he was a first-round pick. And last year at this time, he was not healthy. He was injured. He was very light for whatever reason. And this year he came back in the right shape. And what you're getting is the best of both worlds, right? You're getting a motivated Josh Sweat, who also wants an extension and a new contract, and you're getting a motivated Derek Barnett. And that's been a great thing for the right side of that defensive line.
Geoff, obviously, a lot of people looking at this secondary in the preseason, when they got Steven Nelson, you looked at it differently. But Zach McPherson's a guy that we keep hearing a lot about. How does he kind of fit in with what he's doing?
Yeah, so this is the position I'm most interested to see, Mike, how it performs in the preseason, especially Zach McPherson, because he's been doing a phenomenal job. He clearly has a nose for the ball, and he just like he did in college, he's got pass breakup skills. He's got a good jump on the ball. They like that about him, his athleticism. But he's also been doing most of this while running with the second and third teams. So as we've seen a lot, cornerbacks can look good in training camp practices, but then you put them in games and you get a different result. So obviously this game coming up Thursday night and then the next two after that are going to be real good showcases for Zach McPherson to see if what we're seeing is real or more of the byproduct of being, on the lesser, the second and third teams and going up against lesser talent. To me, it's not that much of a difference because he's not going to be starting anyway. So, I mean, obviously, if he struggles, it's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
If he plays well, you're happy, but you don't make a big deal of it either way because the plan should be to ease him into some kind of, sub-package rotation until he's ready to be a starter down the road.
Let me ask you about this, because when he got drafted, he was asked about inside or outside, and he said versatility. He even said that he could play safety if they wanted him to. Could he be pushing Maddox for the slot?
I think they like what they're seeing right now from Avonte Maddox in the slot, but I suppose there's a shot that maybe, depending on how things go with Rodney McLeod, if they do have a need at safety, maybe what you see is Avonte Maddox go back to safety like he did his rookie year, and then you play Zach McPherson in the slot. The reason why Zach said that is because his last year at Texas Tech, he did rotate from inside to outside quite a bit, as opposed to his junior year where he played almost exclusively on the outside. I don't know what they saw that they really liked him on the inside a lot more as a senior. Probably that a lot of the, in a lot of the spread offenses, a lot of colleges put their best receiver in the inside to try to match him up against the worst corner. So maybe their idea was to put their best corner on the inside a lot against the best receiver. That's possibly what they did at Texas Tech. I don't know. But he does have a lot of that experience. And so whenever you can play the outside or the nickel on the inside, you can almost play like that safety spot. It depends on whether you're a box safety or a deep one. But you should be able to play either or as long as you're smart and intelligent and grasp what you're trying to do on the back end.
Right. That'll be interesting to see what kind of preseason games he has and see how he performs against live competition and see if he gets into that role and gets into that job. What about the linebackers? Did we get any indication how they were used last night and the roles they might have on this team?
Well, it was great to see Alex Singleton come back because the linebacker group really needed it. Obviously, it sucked that Jacoby Stevens got hurt after a couple of nice practices. It really sucks for Davion Taylor that he's week to week with that leg injury, because this guy needed every single rep that he could get. And then obviously with Singleton, who was out for a while, you saw probably more TJ Edwards in packages that were, nickel packages where you're not sure he's best suited for. Although I will say, I think TJ has had a pretty good camp, and Adam and I have both heard that as well. So it is nice to hear that, but they really needed Alex Singleton to come back. And the interesting thing was Alex, he was vaccinated and he still wound up testing positive, but he didn't have terrible symptoms, so he was able to do some things in his hotel to try to stay in shape. So now we'll get a chance to see over the next week or two or more how he fits this Jonathan Gannon-style defense. I'm sure Jonathan Gannon is probably the happiest of all to have a guy like him back, because overall he has a chance to be one of their best linebackers.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, Wilson is you would think definitively out there, and I guess we think Singleton's going to be the other guy, right?
I mean, you never know. I think there's going to be different packages for different situations. They are using Osman and Jannard Avery as kind of and I'm sure when Kerrigan gets back, they'll be kind of your stand-up linebacker who rushes the passer at certain times. But, yeah, I would think that Singleton – see, Eric Wilson knows the defense, but I'm not sure he's as good of a tackler as Alex Singleton showed that he was last year. So as long as Alex Singleton remains an improving player, I think that JG will have no choice. I like how I'm calling him JG now. But I think Jonathan Gannon will have pretty much no choice but to figure out a way to get him on the field.
All right, Geoff Mosher, of course, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Game week, the Eagles play Thursday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll ask you, any indication on whether or not Jalen Hurts will play in that game? I have seen, a handful of starting quarterbacks have not played in these early preseason games.
I have a feeling that he will. I mean, this is not like a Ben Roethlisberger situation where, he's played 10 years in the league and you don't have to see him. You only have 3 games now. So I would think that you would see Jalen Hurts, but I don't have any kind of indication of whether or not he will or won't play. But this is a different kind of style preseason now, and a different quarterback situation than the Eagles have had in the past. So I would think they would want to get him some reps.
Yeah, you would think that, now I guess if you don't somebody brought up a good point. I think it was Adam the other day that brought up the point of, if you're not playing him in games, what are you going to do? Split 50-50 reps between Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl champion, and Nick Mullins? I mean, you're going to ask those guys to play 50% of preseason games? So I guess that's an indication that Hurts is going to play in most of these games, because they don't have a fourth quarterback on the roster, right?
No, they don't have a fourth quarterback right now. I think, obviously, yeah, you'll probably have to see a little more of Flacco and Mullins as in Game 2 and Game 3. I'm sure they're fine with playing Mullins as much as they need, and I'm sure Nick Mullins is fine with that as well. But Hurts will have to get snaps. I mean, to be totally fair to Hurts, I know this might bother some people, but it's not like he's the franchise quarterback with a long-term deal and you're worried about getting him hurt out there. I mean, you need to see him play out there to see what he's going to do. And if he were to get hurt, it would suck. But it's not like, oh, my God, there goes our $100 million investment. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. There's a risk-reward element here, and they absolutely have to take the risk to see what they're getting out of Jalen Hurts, even in the preseason.
Did you get anything on the running backs last night?
I just think that it's been pretty par for the course all camp long, in that Miles Sanders is going to be your number one running back. He's not getting a whole lot of touches. That's not because of any disappointment. It's just because he's Miles Sanders. They already know that he's their guy. Jordan Howard, to me, is getting a good amount of carries because right now he's the leader to be the backup running back, the kind of guy who will get the most carries if Miles Sanders will get hurt. Kenny Gainwell has done a nice job catching the ball. Boston Scott's done a nice job carrying and catching the ball. And I think as we sit here today, those 4 are your kind of top 4, and it's up to Kerryon Johnson to, pick it up and prove something else.
Real quick, last night Sirianni was asked about the RPO. Is that something we anticipated seeing a lot of?
Well, I would think so. If Nick Sirianni is as smart of a coach as Jeff Lurie has said he is, he'll know that one of Jalen Hurts' best attributes at Oklahoma was working off of RPOs. So even if it's not something he did a whole lot of in Indianapolis, you would think it would be something he'd want to incorporate into this offense with Jalen Hurts leading the way, because that's a good concept of offense that Jalen Hurts has thrived on. You can't make it predominantly your offense, but you can add it in at times when you think it gives you an advantage.
Geoff Mosher and the guys have the Inside the Birds podcast out. The next one drops Thursday. It'll be the night of the Eagles and the Steelers, which you can hear live on 97.3 ESPN. The first preseason game kicks off this week for Philly, and, of course, football at 4 will have you covered. All right, at Geoff Mosher NFL, and check out the Inside the Birds podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Download it, and, of course, make it a part of your daily routine. Thank you, pal.
You got it, Mike. Talk to you soon.